Good morning, everyone. Good morning, all. Good morning, all. I want to get that echo. I believe we're live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Motivator Show, usually alongside Lady Chelsea, but she's studying PhD. Look out for the doctor, Chelsea. So I'm on my own again today, but all is well. All is well. All is well. I'll just if I can just get the sound properly calibrated, and we'll start the show. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Now I've got the sound resolved. So welcome to the Motivator Show. This will be another explosive, stimulating, outrageously empowering show. That's the purpose of these shows. This is the Motivator Show, where we translate our words into action. Remember, success is ours for the taking. First of all, before I begin the show forward, I want to thank you and congratulate Ian King, who of course has taken us from night to day. And what a glorious day it is. It's blue skies I can see outside. Beautiful, beautiful sunrise, a beautiful sunrise. Ra is looking upon us, if I may say that. Okay? I also, of course, want to give recognition to both inspirational galaxy management, and with particular note to the founder and chief of Galaxy Radio, Afiwi.net, Chipa Kambabai. I want to give a big fist of salute to him. He's for more than 35 years has steered this multi-platform media communication mode that we're enjoying today. Some of you are listening to us via galaxyafiwi.net on the radio, digital radio. Some of you are now watching us via YouTube, the Motivator Show on YouTube. Some of you are listening to us via Facebook, and of course, the Motivator Show, and similarly on Mixcloud. Yes, truly multi-platform. I give praise to Chipa Kambabai. And of course, never forgetting Elder Erikote, who I've not seen for a while, but my elder, I trust you are well. Special thanks and appreciation, of course, to Dr. Man Abu Ratata, that stalwart, determined African man. And of course, the longest serving pilot here on Galaxy Radio, Afiwi.net, or galaxyafiwi.net, if you use the YouTube or website address. Never forgetting Nickel, the most royal. Don't I love that name? But I want to give a special thanks and appreciation, recognition to the Empress Shanice, the solution finder. I don't hear her moaning. I don't hear her crying. What I see her doing is finding solutions, finding ways through the fog, finding solutions, seeking ways to resolve problems, finding solutions, encouraging, nurturing, forwarding positive vibrations to us all. I give praise to Empress Shanice, the solution finder. Okay. And Empress Shanice always reminds me why this year, predominantly, I've had women who are the leading lights on this show. Because we must give recognition to the sacrifices, the achievement, the determination, the awesomeness of our women of our community. Very, very important. I repeat, very, very important to do so. Because each of us are born of a woman. Oh yeah, let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. And the women I've had on this show this past year have been awesome, outstanding, beautiful intellects, yeah, determined individuals, people of stature, but little known. But we know them. And this platform is intended to give light and recognition to those awesome women of our community. Awesome. Empress Sanish, thank you. The women I've had on this program, thank you. And gosh, we've had some awesome women. Okay, I'll quote a few names in a moment. But I want to continue. But I've had some really interesting feedback on the health section that I devote the first few minutes of this show to. Interesting. Okay. I've had feedback such as the motivator, or they call my other titles. When I go to the grocery store, I do not buy sugar. When I go to the grocery store, I do not buy salt. Just those two acts alone. Don't buy those cartons of sugar. Don't buy those cartons of salt. Just those two acts alone gives a clear messages to your intent. Remember, the show is translate words into action, remembering success is ours for the taking. Just those two acts alone is a statement of intent. Okay. So I want to applaud those who've indicated to me that those acts they've taken, or those indeed who've simply said they've reduced the amount of salt and sugar that they ingest. I ask you to consider, simple, the amount of sugar that you ingest. I remarked last week and in previous weeks that sugar is one of those big killers in our community, or disabling chemicals that we ingest into our bodies. Excessive amounts over periods of time. And I remind you all again of the speech given by Professor Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the University of West Indies, only some months ago, last year, when he noted that in the Caribbean, in certain parts of Africa, and most certainly across Europe and Americas, epidemic levels of diabetes in the Black or African heritage communities. Epidemic levels, diabetes, and all the disabling effects of diabetes on the human body, our physiology. It is a lifestyle choice ingredient that we add to our cuisine. I ask you please to consider, do you need to add those additional spoons of sugar into your teas and coffees? Consider the amount of sugars in those so-called soft or fizzy drinks. And the disabling impact it has, not today or tomorrow or next year or even the following years, but in successive years. Look in your family groupings. Do you know someone with diabetes? Or within your friends network, do you know someone already with diabetes? That's our prevalent in each of our families, in each of our friends network. It is a known condition. Someone will suffer from it. Okay. So I simply ask you to consider the amount of sugar you're ingesting. And where possible, like the testimonies I've received, You don't need to buy those 1 or 2 kilos of sugar you can see in the grocery stores, or those cartons of salt. You don't really need them. But I also ask you to consider the amount of salt you're ingesting. It's your choice, of course. I ask you to consider it. The cumulative impact, hypertension, high blood pressure, hardened arteries. It's a condition that spreads throughout our communities. And again, ask a similar question in your own family network or your friends network. Are there people with the condition? Okay. Heavily attributed to the cumulative effects of salt or sugar on our bodies. I ask you to consider it. I'm not telling you what to do. Yeah, because I know we're stubborn people. Yeah, and you've got into an habit. I understand. I simply say to you, you may wish to consider to reduce gradually the amount in your diet. Yeah, for your own sake, for your loved one's sake, most certainly for your children's sake if you have children. Don't get them into the habit of consuming excessive amounts of sugar and salt, please. And if in doubt, don't take my word for it. But I'm not a clinical or expert or nutritionist, okay? Look for the evidence yourself. Just use a search engine, the effects of sugar on your bodies, the effect of salt on your bodies. Don't take my word for it, please. Do your own research. Satisfy yourself with the robustness of the advice I'm giving to you. And if in doubt, I always say, go to your doctor, he or she who has access to your medical records, and ask them the question. Or indeed, a pharmacist who specializes in nutrition. Ask those experts the question. Don't take my word for it, please. But I do nevertheless ask you to consider the amount of salt and sugar you're ingesting. Equally, I ask you to consider the amount of fat that you ingest. Okay. I've given you stories about buying meat, for example. Yeah, you see these white streaks in the meat, you know, and some meat are just naturally fatty, like pork, for example. You know, when you cook, you see the fat coming out of the meat. But when it enters our body stores it to convert to energy. You see our bodies blowing up, you know. Men got these big bulging bellies and bulging arms and thighs. Women have the same, you know. And some women might look quite interesting, but actually, the excess weight put undue burden on your heart, okay, and clogging up your arteries. The fat is clogging up the arteries. I simply ask you to consider the amount of fat you're ingesting. And I've always got to remind listeners that, of course, dairy products are essentially fat, cow's fat, hardened. Yeah, milk is just another form of cow's fat, really. Yeah, cheese is just another form of cow's fat, or bovine fat, if you like. Yeah, that's what it is. Hardened fat. That's what it is. Just consider the long-term effect of eating hardened cow fat over a period of time, or dairy products over a period of time. Okay. And when you buy those already made meals, read the ingredients. Look at the amount of sucrose. Yeah. That's in those meals. You'll be frightening levels. I'm not going to quote brands or anything like that. I simply ask you to read it. And if in doubt, take a picture of it and take it to an expert, a nutritionist, and ask them to interpret what is on those labels. Don't bring it to me. I'm not the expert, but I've carried out this exercise. When I ask the experts, I'm astonished that some of these products are allowed to be sold in our local shops. Do we innocently eat these products without fully realizing the health implications. Of course, I must mention carbohydrates, because in our cuisines, okay, we have lots of root vegetables, yeah. Yes, we should consume them, very nutritious, but just jam-packed full of carbohydrates that we, in excessive amounts, that we absolutely do not need. So it's really the proportion which is the issue, not the food itself. It's the root food, yeah, yeah. It's the proportion. Should we eat it every day, for example? Because much of this carbohydrate we convert to sugars in our blood, is stored in our bodies. I simply ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates that you are consuming. Yeah, rice, another source of sugars. You know, I simply ask you to consider. And I know for many of us in our cuisines, whether from the Caribbean or indeed from motherland of Africa, they're not dissimilar in the cuisine, and it's heavily weighted to eating excessive types of foods, yeah, which is laden with carbohydrates. But on the positive side, to combat the prevalent diseases in our communities, and let me just quote a few of them: heart disease, yeah, diabetes, hypertension, okay, epidemic levels in our communities. We don't talk about these conditions enough. How to combat these conditions? Of course, it's right for us to eat the right amount of fruits and vegetables. So just looking around for something else which I should have handy here, which I've put somewhere else. Oh, here we are. Fruit and vegetables. Okay. Why fruit and vegetables? Because prior to our modern age, fruit and vegetables were our staples. And that's what our bodies expect. Significant amount of fruits and vegetables. A whole range of vegetables, and yes, roots, vegetables are indeed vegetables. But where they're laden with carbohydrates, they are helpful vegetables if you're eating them every day. Because a young person pointed out to me the other day, of course, you know. Okay. But green vegetables are so essential. A broad range of vegetables are absolutely critical. Fruit, most certainly, are absolutely necessary for our diet. There's an argument that says that meat should be no more than 5 or 10% of our diet. Indeed, there's a clear movement in the community to move away from consuming meat, dead animals, in other words. There's a clear tendency moving away from eating meat or indeed fish. Okay. Because we can gain all of our nutrients from fruits and vegetables, a broad range of vegetables in the right proportions. But I realize for many, that is a lifestyle change which is so difficult to achieve, and I recognize that. But maybe we should teach our children. Teach our children. Remember, success is ours for the taking. Teach our children good dietary habits, so that by the time they're teenagers or in their 20s, it's not a difficult change to make. Yeah. I simply commend that advice to you. Remember, the doctors say, the nutritionists say we should drink at least 2 to 3 liters of water per day. Okay? If you're not sure what is right for you, again, go to your doctor, go to your nutritionist, get that advice. Critical advice. Critical advice. Exercising is incredibly important to us all. You know, we've got to exercise. I know that many of my age group, you know, don't want to exercise at all. They believe that they're too old for it. I can assure you, if you do not exercise, you will get older very quickly. And not only will you get older very quickly, you have a whole range of conditions which we commonly associate with older age because you've not been taking care of yourselves in your younger age. But it is never too late. Exercise enhances our lives, lengthens our lives. The enhancement is that you won't have to suffer the whole broad range of conditions that are typically associated with getting older. Because they are simply conditions as a result of us not taking care of ourselves in our younger lives. But we can make a difference for ourselves and our loved ones, for our children and others that we respect. It is mission critical to us. And those of you who are younger, I know some of you believe that you don't need to exercise because you're young, so it doesn't really matter. I can assure you, whilst you're young and you're vibrant, now is the time, if you're not practicing good nutritional habits, now is the time to do this. Now is the time to get in the habit of exercising or running at least for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. Yeah. At least getting your heart, raising your heart every day. Get in the habit of doing this every day. So as you get older, it's just a habit for you. It's not a strain or bore or chore. You're in the habit of doing so. You can make a difference for yourself, for your loved ones and your children, and indeed your children's children, by your actions you take today. Why do I give these messages out? With my other hat on, I see far too many of our community members who are suffering from a broad range of illnesses, which are essentially lifestyle illnesses, illnesses that could be avoided by us consciously taking action to maintain a healthy lifestyle. I see too often, and in my case, it's every other family member that I come across, every other family I encounter. There's someone in that family with one of the conditions which I've just outlined. Yeah? So we're doing it to ourselves. We can make the difference. So every week I'm on, I will remind you all the necessity to take care of our physical health. As a good brethren from Nottingham would remind us, it's equally important to take care of our mental and spiritual health. And if you have doubt about your mental health, I implore you to seek advice from your doctor, who can refer you on to a specialist. We've had specialists on this show, mental health practitioners, who are always willing to help. And I will create a website around the Motivator Show with all of these incredibly helpful past contributors to the show, so that the contact details will be there on the website for you to go back and reference them when needed. That will happen in the coming weeks. We'll create a website for this show, because the information that is being provided by myself and by the guest on the show is invaluable. Information which needs to resonate with your consciousness. It's important to take care of our mental and spiritual health. Give yourself time to allow all the pressures and worries of the world just to flow away, and just for you to settle. Allow your energy levels to rise, your confidence to rise, and for you, therefore, to be strong enough to face the day yet again. And remember, you are not alone. There's also another health message, which, again, a previous contributor to this show reminded us. It's important for us to take care of our sexual health. I know for some of you, your eyebrows have just gone up just at that point. Oh, sexual health? Oh, it is not a taboo subject. It's extremely serious. In our communities, here in Britain at least, I don't have figures for the Caribbean or motherland of Africa. But here in my part of London, we've had persistently for more than 20 years that I've been monitoring this particular subject, abnormally high levels of STIs in our community. And STI stands for, of course, sexually transmitted infections. Okay. And the reason why this happened persistently is that we're refusing to have those mature discussions amongst ourselves, or indeed to teach our children good sexual health. We are as parents remiss if we do not teach our children good sexual health, and they should therefore develop good habits when it comes to their bodies and taking care of their sexuality. Why is that important? You have my previous guest point out the levels of gonorrhea, chlamydia, yeah, a whole range of other diseases that pervade our communities. Okay, untreated. I'm not just talking about AIDS, HIV. Okay, yeah, untreated, because the individual, the men and the women concerned, have not taken the trouble, as they might go to the doctor if they've got a headache or they've got a tummy ache. They don't go to the sexual health clinic just to get themselves checked out. And I strongly recommend, if you're starting a new relationship, before you start that relationship intimately, both of you should go to the sexual health clinic and establish your sexual health status. Let them run the test on you just to make sure you're clear. You most probably are, but it's better to be safe than sorry. One or other of you infecting the other, because many of these conditions are going undiagnosed and therefore continue to spread throughout our communities. And those of you who are members of our faith communities, please, please, please don't use biblical or theological reasons why someone should not seek sound sexual advice. Please, I implore you, because all you're doing in effect is perpetuating STIs in the community. I ask those who are leaders to take this subject extremely seriously. Don't simply tell your congregation, don't have sex before marriage. You know, yes, that's an ideal. But in actuality, encourage those who are your followers to make sure that they at least once a year visit a sexual health clinic to establish their sexual health status. I implore you to do so. I implore you to do so. Leaders of community organizations, the question of sexual health should be a part of your agendas by default, because there's no reason why we should have way above average STIs in our community. And those of you in the UK, you can of course access the services of the online sexual health services, which is sh24.org. Just put in your search engine, it'll come up. And you could do this online. You don't need to go to a physical clinic. You could do it online if you live here in England and Wales. All right? So I implore you to think carefully about this subject. Don't ignore the advice. I implore you. You are not impervious to the conditions which I've outlined. We are all vulnerable to these conditions. Okay? Therefore, we must build our defenses by eating well, exercising, having a positive outlook, and taking those necessary steps to ensure that we don't fall victim to those conditions I mentioned today, which are fundamentally lifestyle conditions. The bulk of the diseases I come across are lifestyle conditions. In other words, we've taken deliberate action can make the difference. I know the leader of this station here, Chief Cumberby, would wish to give such messages to protect those for whom he has responsibility. I know Empress Shanice, the solutions finder, would want to give such messages to protect those for whom who listen to those wonderful voices. Vitally important. I rest there, and I hope that message resonates with you and you feel strong enough to take those steps to protect yourselves, protect your loved one, and to indeed protect our children, indeed our children's children. I hope that message resonates with you. All righty. Let me press on, because obviously it was necessary to continue to give those messages out because these issues pertain in our community and are persistent. Therefore, we must be persistent in communicating these messages. Okay. So if I may, I'm going to move forward because this is going to be a really interesting show. The theme is really to continue to recognize the achievement of our women. Women, of course, are the backbone of any organization I've encountered. Women are the backbone. The organization would not exist without women's involvement. I come across very few organizations which has a social responsibility to their profile, of which women are not playing a critical role. And us men have a tendency not to give women the recognition they absolutely deserve. So since January, I continue to give particular focus to women's achievements. And I think you all would agree that our sister Anola last week was an outstanding example of the very best of us, an incredible, outstanding intellect, okay? Outstanding intellect, and whose papers that she's produced are papers I recommend that each of you should digest, should understand, should give appreciation to. These are the types of people we must give publicity to. And I've got to remind you, and I would dedicate these shows to giving recognition to women of such stature, who outside of our community are not known, but within our community should be revered. I know she won't mind me saying that, I'm sure. But she should be revered, absolutely revered, okay? The founder of the Black Knowledge Society, okay? And if you haven't gone to that website, I recommend the website to you. Why? Because you find yourself being inspired by the efforts that she's making, okay? I don't want to say too much more about her because I've just kind of gushing because some of these women are just so awesome. Oh my dear, absolutely awesome. I will just say this though. What she also represents, and I'll mention a few others in a moment, what she also represents is our ability as a community to take care of ourselves. You know? Okay, she represents, as it were, the antibodies, as it were. Yeah. Our defenses, you know, against all the maladies, all the negative information that we receive about ourselves and the abuse that is being hurled at us continuously, okay? What she represents is the antibodies. As we're infected by all that negativity, it's people like Anola who provide a basis upon which we are able to raise our heads in esteem, in royalty, as we are, okay? So of course, the Black Knowledge Society, as she has coined, is there, and its intent is to provide a clear path to success. You know, I think the word she used is to provide the community with incredible resources that seeks to unite us, inspire us into transformative action. Hey, hey. Who can argue with that? Eh? This is the Motivator Show, where we translate our words into action and reminding us that success is ours for the taking. And I'll give out her website address. So it's www.thebks.co.uk. In other words, the Black Knowledge Society. thebks.co.uk. Check out the website, contact her. You know, it's women such as that who are the backbone of our community. Okay. I want to give recognition to that outstanding sister, you know, Dr. Marlene Ellis. Why? Wow. You know, she's not a medical doctor, I should point out. It's a reminder, she's not a medical doctor. But what she is, of course, is an intellect, an awesome intellect, akin to Sister Anola. Okay? Awesome intellect. And that, of course, that program focused on the Black Breast Cancer Network. Breast cancer is a clear and present danger in our communities, but it can be detected early. But women, girls, have to examine themselves on a regular basis. Okay, I'm not an expert on this matter, but I would implore you to make contact with people such as Dr. Marlene Ellis, okay, and contact them through their own website. Again, I want to remind everyone, she's an example of the antibodies in our community, the transformative work, the antibodies, okay? And her website, of course, is www.blackbreastcancer.com. blackbreastcancer.com. I implore you, women, girls, contact her via the website, okay? And of course, she will either signpost you or network you with people either who are in similar position or indeed where you can gain the advice that you require, okay? I implore you to do so. I implore you to do so. Don't be coy. These are not matters to be coy on. These are extremely serious matters, okay? Extremely serious matters. I implore you to do so. If in doubt, it can't harm. There is no harm here to be caused. It can only provide positive, responsive. It's a way of ensuring that our community is healthier tomorrow than it is today. Again, she's an example of the antibodies in our community. But today's program will focus on a sister that, or indeed two sisters will be here today, that goes back to an earlier program, which we focused on FGM. And those of you who are not sure that term means, FGM stands for female genital mutilation. In some cultures, it's considered to be a means for a girl to become a woman. In other places, it's simply mutilation of a woman's most private and intimate parts. I'm not going to utter an opinion, men who support FGM. I'm not going to, because we need to talk, I think. Now that I've seen it, now that I've met women who've admitted this, now that I've actually seen what it does to a woman and the condition and the after effects of being mutilated in that way, I don't mind telling you men, and indeed I'm sure there's a few women out there, I strongly object to the mutilation of women and girls in this manner. It is quite horrific. I can't believe a man would support such a thing. Because the women, and I know it is difficult for many women to talk about the experience and its impact on their lives. But I've got to do another program on this particular subject. I really do want women to testify the after effects of this, particularly when it comes to giving birth, for example, or when they're menstruating. I really believe we need these first-hand testimony. And I recognize the difficulty for some women to discuss it because they themselves are psychologically scarred by the experience. Okay. But as a result of that particular program, and Sister Naima Ali, who was our guest on that program, we also had a guest from an outstanding organization, which I subsequently discovered I've had contact with in my earlier hats when I was a school governor, Forwarduk. Now, Forwarduk is an interesting organization because it was started by a woman who I thought, to be honest with you, a woman who I thought actually was born in Jamaica. Okay. It was started by an outstanding sister by the name of Efua Dokenu. I think I pronounced it correctly. And of course, myself being of Jamaican heritage, okay, when I heard the name Efua Dokenu, and we Jamaicans say in a particular way, it sounds as if, well, she must be a local person. In fact, I'd thought for some time that she was actually a Jamaican woman. Okay? I have to say, only then to discover that actually she's born in Ghana. Okay? And unfortunately, we've now lost her in 2014. But I came across her in my school as a chair of a secondary school, which had a 98% African population, of which that population, just under 48% or so, were from West Africa. Okay. And we had a number of young ladies who disappeared during the month of September through to the end of October. And then they suddenly appeared, but they were in a different state of mind. Only then to discover what had happened to them. It's only then, since 1994, that I discovered what had happened to them. As chair of governors at the time, I was horrified by what had happened. And of course, in these public sector terms, this is a child protection issue. This is a child protection issue. And of course, we had the parents in, and I sat in on the original meeting with the parents, with the head teacher and the social workers to understand what had happened. And it was explained in no uncertain terms to us, this was part of the culture. This is the coming of age. And of course, we had to respond by noting that each of these girls were actually born here in Britain. Okay? And whilst there's a recognition as part of the family's culture, the issue of the FGM, and that is the correct term, not female circumcision, okay, is one that is child protection. And indeed, each of those parents were placed on the child protection register. Okay. Now, I recognize now that we need to think through how to tackle this at school governor and school level. Because whilst I recognize, yes, it most certainly is a child protection issue within the English legal system, there's actually cultural sensitivities that we also equally consider. And as a result of that conversation, and this is where the overlap in terms of the name and my familiarity, I went away and did some research. And there was a paper I came across produced by Community Health Southwark at the time. I say by reference in the Community Health Southwark paper, And it was a paper that was authored or referenced by Afua Dokendo. And it was a paper that was called Child Protection and Female Mutilation, Advice for Health Education, Southwark. And it was her paper that was being referenced. And that's how I know of her. Okay. And I recall doing some research and discovering, I tried to get her into the school to discuss the subject. I was unsuccessful at the time, but it just goes to show how these paths intersect. So what I'm really pleased today is that this time we have here live on the Motivator Show, and indeed my other hat as a local councillor, I'm privileged to have with us two members, important members of Forward UK. And I'm going to ask both of you to introduce yourself. And I'm going to start with Mary, if you don't mind, because Mary appeared on the FGM show, you see, when we discussed female genital mutilation, and provided, if I may say so, some really inspirational advice to listeners, which I can assure you had profound impact on a number of women who were listening to the show. I received numerous texts. They didn't want to call in, and I understand now why they didn't want to call in, but you know what? You have one of these wonderful, calming, authoritative voices that provided comfort to many. Mary, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and your role in Forward UK. Mary, please.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for having us here again. My name's Mary Otuko, and I'm the UK Programs Manager at Forward. I've been with Forward now for just over 6 years. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to come back to you soon, but your role, you didn't just confirm your role.
Yeah, so my role is UK Programs Manager. So that means I look after our UK engagement projects. So that's community program, a youth and schools program, and a little bit of training, you know, along with my manager. And yeah, so that's really what forms our UK program, but we'll go into that a little bit later.
Thank you indeed.
Yeah.
I also want to cordially say appreciation to, you're referred to as Tox, is that right? Yes. Aha. I'm going to ask you please to introduce yourself to us, just to confirm what you do within Forward UK, because I know it's a very important position.
Morning, Martin. Thank you as well for allowing Mary to invite me in. And it's a pleasure to be here and to talk about what we do. My name is Tox Okeni. I'm head of UK Programs and Operations at Forward. And that is a plethora of things. I look after contracts, third party matters, and also head up our UK programs. And we are going to speak a bit about that shortly, but that involves all our work that we do in the UK. We work all over UK. We also work with partners on the ground. That's how we reach out to people. We work with a lot of volunteers that we call champions. Our community champions are what make a difference to our work. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, thank you. And can you just remind us, when does the Forward UK start? When was it established? Tox.
Well, that was 1985. It's been a while, and obviously there was a bit of a more, leading up to that, but it was 1985. Thank you.
Brilliant. And of course, you refer to as Forward UK, and I believe the name actually means, and if I get the name right, a Foundation for Women's Health, Research and Development.
You're correct.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
So we chose Forward instead of having all that long.
It's like forward forever, backwards never.
Absolutely. You see what I mean? There you go, Mary. There you go. You see, that's exactly what I mean about absolutely. And another curious and interesting feature of Forward is that you are an organization, okay? An organization established by African women for African women. Would that be right?
Precisely, we are by and for.
Brilliant, brilliant. And it is so important for women to hear this, okay? Because we don't have enough of these organizations which have stood the test of time and have got clear succession from one policy to another, and are not simply controlled by a single person, but there's a teams of people who are very clear that the organization is a community asset and which must be protected for the next generation. And you are an example of that thinking. So I want to commend this organization to the community. I just want to say that from the outset. If I may, just there are many parts to you. And of course, the formation, of course, was centered around FGM. If I go to you, Mary, okay. I won't go into the other aspects of your work, but I did want to focus on FGM for the moment, and just give us some idea of its prevalence. We're based in London, but you can talk about London and beyond. Just give us some understanding of what it is you're up against in terms of changing attitudes, etc. I've relayed to you my experience back in 1994, for example, but give us some idea. Give us some idea. What are we up against? Is this cultural? Is it tradition? Is there change occurring?
Yes, thank you, Martin. So we know that FGM is a global problem. FGM, the guesstimate is that over 200 million women worldwide are living with the impact of FGM. They would have gone through or been put through FGM. We know in the UK, research a few years ago said, up to 137,000 women in England and Wales actually are living with FGM. Now that number would have gone up by now. And a lot of this is, women who came here who had already had FGM, but they've proceeded to have their children here over the years. People have come from different countries, different parts of the world. We know FGM, Africa is the most affected continent, but we know FGM happened across the world, in Asia, in, even South America and other parts of the world. But we focus a lot on Africa because, that's who we are. But any woman who comes to us, whether they're from Asia, Middle East, or South America, we support them. We've also come across white Caucasian British women, few, but they've gone through FGM, either because they were married to somebody who came from FGM practicing communities or families. And so we've worked with women like that. So FGM is prevalent. And in the UK, London has the highest prevalence. And of course, in London, Southwark is named as the borough with, it's in the top 4 and actually the highest prevalence in London. Because, look at London, it's the most, it's diverse, people are everywhere now. And so wherever the communities from, practicing backgrounds, we tend to carry our cultures with us, our foods, our dressings, our music, but also some other, more hidden cultures, and some of which are harmful. So wherever there are diverse communities, you expect that, there may be such practices, people living with it or people who still believe strongly in the practice.
What impact has Forwarduk UK had on changing attitudes here?
So if you think back to 1983 when Forwarduk thought, so, these people here don't know this. This was when women started, probably refugees from certain countries or continents or Africa and other parts started coming to the UK, especially London. And so women were going to the maternity to have their babies and their bodies look different, their genitals look different. The doctors did not know what this was, And so Efua, who happened to be a midwife here at the time, having come from Ghana, knew, somehow something about FGM, and so Forward was born. Nobody at the time spoke about FGM. Even fast forward to, even as recent as, the 90s, nobody was speaking about FGM. It's such a sensitive, it still is
Yes.
However, forward, we've never given up. We now have men speaking about FGM. We have male champions who are so powerful in the communities. We have faith leaders speaking about FGM. We have, doctors, a lot of service providers here now are aware of, what FGM is. If a woman comes to my practice as a medical professional, how do I ask her about FGM? How do I support her, knowing that this is a very sensitive, firstly, knowing that this is her culture, whether we like it or not. So how do I approach her, but approach her with respect as well? Because with communities, once you come across as being disrespectful or using certain terms, calling them barbaric and something, the wall goes up. And then that's where you will stop. They won't open up. So it's about listening to the people, to the woman, finding out what she's struggling with and how you can actually support them, support that woman. And so the most impact we've had is raising awareness, breaking the taboo around FGM so that we normalize it. Let's talk about it. Let's bring women together so we can sit and actually talk about it, because ever since it was done to them, they've never spoken about it because they're told you must never speak about this. If you speak about it, you die. Those beliefs really hold strong, among people who actually have these practices. So we have made a phenomenal change. We've seen now a lot of other organizations also working on FGM, whereas, before, especially from the communities, from the practicing communities, we've trained lots of women survivors who came to us to access support, and they've now become like really powerful advocates, speaking out and speaking to their communities and saying, we have amazing culture, but part of our culture is also harmful. So we can ditch those ones and bring more new things, new positive things in, So for me, I think normalizing the speaking about it and challenging it and tackling it is really the biggest achievement we have made.
Thank you very much. And you're absolutely right, because your organization continues to resonate, and I hope will resonate here in Southwark. In fact, if I go to you, Tox, and it's interesting, because I see that the Forwarduk are commissioned by local authorities across London. Okay, I don't know if you've previously been commissioned by Southwark at any point, but we'll come to that later on, maybe another time, another place. But most certainly there are Southwark councillors and others listening to the show. Okay, so tell us, why would a local authority commission yourselves to provide public health advice or advice to women in their local authorities? What are the qualities of your organisations enable you to accept these type of public health engagements?
We have been commissioned by a few local authorities in London. But before that, I'll just, we have commissioning from London councils and MOPAC to work in 11 boroughs in London. It's a kind of a pan-London service. But in actual fact, we do not turn anyone away. If they come from other boroughs, because it's what we do, and it's about inclusivity and ensuring that when anyone access us, their issues are not going to wait until they go somewhere else. We see them, we do the best we can for them, refer them, work with them. What we bring to the boroughs is manifold, but we actually believe in I would say a holistic service. Not just about the issue that when women come to us, or even men, they come with maybe a passporting issue that brings them in. It could be FGM. But there's a lot going on in their lives, especially in the last 2 years, 3 years. We have found that women, are affected by multiple forms of trauma. And therefore, it becomes more than just FGM. So in local authorities, we've worked with London Borough of Waltham Forest and Tower Hamlets, working with families, but specifically with fathers, the family, because a lot of times when you have issues around FGM, the focus is on the mom and females in the family. But the men are also hurting or they are affected. It's their issue too. So we work with them what we do is it goes from emotional support to practical support and counseling. Just talking them through, what the challenges are. For example, if a family is being investigated, that they are potentially going to subject a child in their family to FGM, a lot of engagement is going on with social services, possibly police, and we then are the local community organization that go in there with a culturally nuanced understanding. Because one thing about FGM is this: as opposed to so many other harmful practices, a lot of women who hold this cultural practice do it out of love. And it's counterintuitive. You just think, what does that mean? How? Because they think they are doing the best for their daughters, making their daughters chaste. They will marry into a good family and a good man. And that's where it comes from. So when we talk about it, we don't talk about, oh, FGM is barbaric. No, we go at it from a human rights perspective and a child abuse perspective, Then we engage with these families in the boroughs, doing educational, psychosocial educational sessions with them, talking to them, talking about changing mindsets. And so they understand and they accept not to do it because it's harmful, it's not right, and culture is dynamic, instead of not doing it because it's illegal. Because if you don't do something because it's illegal, when you see a loophole, you probably would do it. So that's one of the things we do working with local authorities. And then we also work, in a multi-agency perspective. We work with the professionals in the local authority and all the health professionals, schools in particular. Mary mentioned schools earlier on. We go in with a whole school approach. We don't just talk to students, we talk to the whole school community. Because maybe a child would want to disclose something about FGM or any other abuse, they might go to the dinner lady. And if we have not engaged with the teaching staff, how would the dinner lady know where to go to? So a lot of that is also value for money and a multiplier, because not only do we provide the FGM support and advice and a little bit more, we also provide safeguarding, general safeguarding support to schools, to families, to local statutory bodies in the local authority, and general other, I would say, outlets. One thing that's so crucial as well is when we worked in Tower Hamlet, Waltham Forest, we also work with the faith groups, and we do this in all the local authorities we work in. We also work currently in Healing Council. We have a direct consultancy project with them as we speak now. And we've done the same in Hounslow. And what we just do is really to make sure that whatever is going on the ground, we engage community organization. We train women and men in the community to be multipliers of change, to talk about this as community champions, which is like volunteers.
Thank you. And you now bring on to other issues that affect women and girls. The other issue that comes up, and I understand this is part of your mission, to address the issue of child marriages and of course, the domestic and sexual violence in the home. Now, can you just give us some idea of the extent of your ranges? Either one of you can respond to this, how you tackle in those communities where child marriage is still practiced, or indeed where you come across domestic and indeed sexual violence against women and girls. What are your tools for engagement in those circumstances? Either one of you can.
Advocacy is a very big thing.
Okay.
But sometimes it's overused. When you say advocacy, what does that mean? It's just about, creating safe spaces to have uncomfortable conversations in the community. And that could be in a safe community setting. We work with local GPs, schools, faith groups, regardless, it could be, a mix of it. We go into their spaces as well, engage with community influencers. That is a very direct way of getting into the community. And then we have workshops. And sometimes what we just do is, for example, when we had the fourth lockdown, we couldn't go directly to people. We walked through our community champions. And what we did was to have a questionnaire to ask families, what's going on with you right now? Because this was an unknown. And then they fed back to us. And one of the things that is not what we deal with then, but we had to repurpose our work to address the issues happening out there. And we call that, delivering differently. And moms were saying to us, it's, homeschooling, digital poverty. And then we started getting, act together, getting some funding, getting Chromebooks for families, phones for families, data updates. The one way we engage is to think out of the box. And because we spoke about by and for, we work with a community advisory group as well. And we also have a young women's advisory group. They tell us, and our community champions, what is happening on the ground. They are the veins to which we reach out there. And we don't just say, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what we're going to do. Our people tell us. We make sure that we keep those channels open. And like we are here today, that's why we are even saying that we are there. We don't, nobody gets left behind as we are concerned. And that's something we work on.
Thank you.
So talking is one of our key ways of reaching out. Yeah.
Thank you. You repeatedly talk of community champion. If I go to you, Mary, so how does one become a community champion for Forward UK? Tell us, is that possible?
Right. So we love our community champions. We've trained many cohorts of women. So basically, a lot of the women we've trained they initially came to us for support, liked what the service they received, and then they said, how can I help? And then we're like, oh, you could, join this group. We're looking for women to train. So you can start actually speaking out in your community, supporting opening the doors. The community champions are crucial. They open doors in the community for us. And yesterday I was at one of the Islamic Center here in Greenwich, and I went with one of the ladies who first came to us as actually a service user. She's a Muslim lady. I've never been into this mosque before, although I live quite close to it. And I went with her. And she was like my secret weapon, really. We met with the imam. He was so welcoming. So they're our voices in the community. They bring the voices of the community to us. We also send our voices through them. So we just recruit, community women, especially from FGM affected communities, although there's some who are not from FGM practicing communities. And then we do 4 or 5 weeks training. We have different modules of training that we work with them. Most of them are mothers, so we do like 1 session a week over 5 weeks. And then it ends up with them actually planning and delivering a social action project. So it's normally we challenge them. We're like, okay, we want your social action project to be around violence against women and girls. Especially a lot of them go for FGM because normally a lot of them are either survivors or they're from practicing communities. So we've trained like Healing project started in July. We started by training a group of 13 women to really be the champions of these champions in healing. And we're working through them. They know local organizations that are already working with women. So they just approach them, set up a meeting and say, oh, Mary, can we meet with this organization? Can we go and do a workshop there? Can we do a session there? Even in churches, in mosques. So they are our really, they kind of shine a light on our work in the communities. They open doors for us in communities.
And you can, as you know, we've gone to the trouble creating a background for you. So we're promoting your website address somewhere. It should be, I think, over my shoulder somewhere. This side, I've got it right.
Yes.
There you are, Forward UK. All right. And so it's forwarduk.org.uk for those of you who are listening, and those of you who can see it. It's www.forwarduk.org.uk. I commend this organization to the community. I'm going to keep emphasizing this. Can I come back to you now, Tox, in relation to the next phase? Now, is Forward UK funded through donation from the community, or do you rely upon funding through regional or national bodies in order to maintain your work at the moment?
We have a diverse funding stream, and as you know, especially now, the economic climate is very challenging, and therefore we always try to innovate. We do all sorts of things, including flash mobs, which can be very fun. Not in the last 2.5 years, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, we get funding from different, I'll say, donors, individual donors. People actually fund us through legacy when they, pass on. Some of them we don't even know. We get grants as well. A lot of our funding comes from trusts. And we are now also trying to diversify, working a little bit more with the public sector and being a more, I would say, dynamic professional setup. And so 1p is not too small. Because you look after your pennies, the pounds will be very happy. But it's not about just money for us. It's about, that end product. When a person who accesses our services is able to, function better wherever they find themselves. And so therefore, the time that people even give us is money, a lot of money. If I add up what our community champions do, it's immeasurable. We also have a different type of funding. We do pro bono legal support. We have a legal barristers chambers in London who are championing this for us. They are called Guardian Court Chambers. And we have 10 other solicitors firms who have joined up in this scheme. And it means, thank you. We know what how much it costs to actually get maybe even an initial meeting or appointment with a solicitor or barrister. They will do this on areas of immigration and family law. The only passporting requirement we ask is that the person comes from Black and minority ethnic background, or that they are affected by violence against women and girls, which could be anything, so long as it's any issue, sexual violence, domestic abuse, FGM, anything like that. And they would come to us through that website access, as you said, if they're not sure, or if not, they can come through our normal number, 0208 960 4000, and someone will pick your call. You want to say someone?
You say that again much too quickly.
Okay, I'll say it again, 0208 960 4000.
Got that. Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
Very quickly.
And that's our main number. And they'll be able to support that person with the initial advice. If they are legally able, they might even be able to get them someone. And if not, there are opportunities where they can get pro bono support to progress the issue and to try to resolve it. Generally, to give them an informed choice, to make an overview, to make informed choices with legal matters that affect them.
Okay.
So to put it together, funding comes in different ways. For example, the pro bono is in kind, but when you add it up, what they do for us every year is in excess of £200,000 through only that service. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was aware of this as part of research, that the organization has significant credibility, you know, and most certainly deserves every penny you can gain from the community. And just to say to those who are listening, you can donate via the website. I've noticed you've got a section on the website that features donation. I haven't donated yet, but I will donate later today. Okay,
Thank you.
It's and I can see that these are manageable amounts. I can see absolutely no reason not to donate, because the work, I've seen your reports, the work is outstanding. We need more Forward UKs. We need more of you. If I may, maybe just come back to yourself. You quoted some stats for both Southwark, where I'm currently based, and other London boroughs. Okay, can you give us some idea of your interaction in those boroughs where you have the greatest concentration of FGM, or indeed maybe violence against women and girls in our community? What is your engagement levels, and what help do you need to improve the engagement levels in those boroughs?
Yes, so as part of the London Council Ascent Consortium, our first point of contacts with the boroughs are the VOG leads, you know, the leaders of the violence, people working violence against women and girls. So we have a number of every VOG lead in all the boroughs that's allocated to us. And we attend all the VOG forums, the BME forums, the faith group forums, just to be present and to speak, to let them know that we are here. The council actually, they've put money in this pot so we can come. We are the bridge between the professionals and the communities. So I live in Greenwich, and for some reason we have the highest target to deliver in terms of one-to-one support for survivors in the borough. So Greenwich is very diverse borough, and lots of people from FGM practicing background. So we really try to engage with the community, either through the places of worship, we go where they are, or community organizations that are already bringing them together, the community group organizations. I told you yesterday I was at the mosque to speak to find a way into, we went and sat with the women, but we couldn't start speaking to the women before we go via the imam. And then he said, okay, we are starting Ramadan. Why don't we start in May? And I was like, fantastic. He's like, give me your number, give me your contact. Here is my number. So that is already a door open for us. But we know that London is really diverse. There is no borough in London where there are no survivors of FGM. Even countrywide, people have moved out of London, people have settled in different parts of the country. So we go, and by the way, we don't discriminate, especially in schools. We do children's sessions as well from year 5 and 6 in primary school, a different lesson plan for them. We don't segregate the classes, boys and girls together, black and white. We don't. Some schools ask us, do you want us only to bring the girls? And we're like, no. Then it starts becoming like it's a girl's problem, and it's not good. So same with communities. And I went to Cashalton for the week of the International Women's Day. There was an event there. They invited me to go and speak. My audience were just Caucasian women, but it was important that I spoke to them. And I said, you're probably sitting there wondering why I'm talking to you about this. But FGM is it's a safeguarding issue, So you could be a teacher in a school and a child is affected or a child discloses. So it's important that you know about this. You could have a friend who is a survivor who needs help. Then you could maybe signpost her to us, refer her to us. So we really go to where the communities are. Yes. Few women approach us directly, come and knock at our door, but most of the support cases we get is by going out, doing workshops, doing coffee mornings, speaking to communities. And by the way, when you asked about how can somebody join Forward, our champions are not just women, we need men to be engaged. You know, we could have a group of champions in Forwarduk, for example, men and women, because men's voices matter in communities. When a father speaks, that thing doesn't happen, or it happens. So we've come across girls who are actually protected from FGM by their fathers, because the voice of the fathers, of the husbands, of the male folk matters. And we need to use that. We need them on this platform if we are to really end this practice.
Wonderfully said, and this is why I needed to come back to this subject. I could tell by the messages, and what I'm receiving at the moment, that certainly there are poignant messages that have been communicated. But of course, I want to make sure we take this forward. Okay, if I can go to you now, Talk. So I want to make sure we take this forward. Okay, so if you were, take this as a mythical London borough, okay, and you see that there are community representatives from countries where FGM is prevalent, and you can see that there's a problem. What would you want? What strategy would you apply to engage that London Borough to recognise you as being a long-standing authoritative voice on the subject, okay, and so that they will commission you to work within that borough? What strategies would you want? What strength would you want to pull? Would you, for example, approach local councillors, for example, and provide them with and lobby them initially? Tell us your strategy. What would you want to do?
Martin, we would go everywhere. We believe at Forward that the most important person is the receptionist. So we would go to the key people like you, the councillors on the ground. We'll find them. We'll start with schools, and then we do what we call enrichment sessions. Well, all we need is one school that would accept us. Those sessions are sessions that would go on for like 6 weeks. They are all tailored to the needs of the school. And you know, a lot of things you do is by example. When people hear, word of mouth is amazing. If you change happen and people see it, then there's a multiplier effect. Unfortunately, that is a very slow way around it. But that is how we have worked, and that is why we are still here today since 1985. It's been a very challenging environment for non-governmental organizations or charities, well, basically everyone really. But it is really about doing the scoping and the research. Yeah. When we know where there's high prevalence, then we look at where are their vogue leads, who are the councillors, and then we try to find out who is the key, vogue person in the local authority, safeguarding. We then we work with all those key partners, and then health. If there's an FGM clinic, it's easier because then we will start working with them. We would have known anyway, and be engaging with them because, or if there are people ask us really psychosexual clinics, and they say, what on earth are those? We work with them, and then we find out what is the norm that gets us into this community. Because at Forward, we don't believe that there's any hard to reach community. It is organizations who are hard to access. So we go and find them. We do the legwork, and then we continue to impress. What we are doing today is part of how we tell, we are saying to councillors in Forwarduk, we are saying to even the, relevant MPs, key safeguarding leads that we are here. We are able and ready to work with our communities. We can do it in our sleep, although I don't. But it is what wakes us up in the morning. Yes. It is what makes us put one foot in front of the other, is to make sure that every girl child is safeguarded, protected, and every father is happy and secure knowing that their children are in a good place. And they can also sleep and rest because they have a good relationship with their partners. I know When you talk about sex is not a funny something people talk about, especially maybe, well, in most communities, but it matters. And women affected by FGM, it would affect their sex life. Their partners are not happy. These conversations need to be heard. People need help now more than ever before. If it's about convincing, we would convince, key, grant makers in local authorities. All we need is a name and an address. We are there.
Consider it done. Consider it done here in Southwark. No doubt whatsoever. We need you here in Southwark. I'm interested in stats, you see. The stats were quite interesting, and they're not stats, Mary, that are regularly reported to councillors, as far as I'm aware, on a regular basis. The last stats I saw with Profile, for example, here in Southwark, really focused on STIs, okay, on FGM, and I think that was quite a profound observation. Prior to coming on, I just checked the last report we had, and it certainly did not. Oh, there we go. I'll take this call. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Oh, is the sound not good? Oh dear.
Yeah. Only on this, the one who was just speaking. She's a bit echoey.
A bit echoey.
And it sounds like maybe she's a bit too close to the microphone.
Oh,
but
okay.
The other one's okay.
Oh, brilliant. I'm making improvement in that case.
Yes, definitely. Improvements are going on.
Yeah. But before you go, I know you're coming, and I appreciate those calls because it's a sound check which we all need. The issues we've just been discussing, FGM, female genital mutilation, violence against women and girls, okay? I'm sure you have an opinion, because you're born of a mother, so I'm sure you have an opinion. Just give us your opinion on what you've observed, and do you want to give encouragement to Forwarduk?
Yeah, man, they're doing good work, and I commend them highly, and the more of that kind of work, the better.
Great.
Because it's a terrible, disgusting thing.
Yeah.
The FGM, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's out of order.
Yeah.
It's really out of order, So I can't commend them highly enough,
Thank you. And I appreciate your regular calls. It's the sound check. It's so important to me. Pleasure.
Okay, bro.
Thank you.
All right, then.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right.
Now, are we all still here?
Yes.
Oh, we are still here. Great.
We are.
They're making sure. I think that caller just reminded me, I've not actually given out the telephone number. Okay. And I'm told that's one of my failings. So I'll now put that right. So for those of you who are listening and want to express an opinion, and I really want to make sure we get the expressions of opinions balanced, okay? Because I heard what he just said. It is disgusting and so on and so on, okay? And I'm very conscious now, so going back to 1994, that the language we use has got to be cautious. Okay? We want to ensure that those who are, if I may use your term, Mary, survivors, okay, feel able to call in. Those who are husbands or partners of those who are survivors feel able to call in. Those who are not affected by FGM, but have got some other issues to raise in terms of violence and domestic or sexual violence, feel free to call in. And the importance of this discussion is I want to avoid castigating. Yeah, I want to avoid castigating somebody. What I want to encourage is, of course, constructive engagement. And I know that's going to be difficult. I know that's difficult because in my business of politics, it's very difficult much of the time. Okay? But constructive engagement is a positive step forward because it allows us to hear and listen and learn. Okay, so then I'll give out the number to call. It's 0208 133 5616. I repeat, 0208 133 5616. Okay. Now then, if I may go to you, Tox, forgive me, Mary, sorry, you're next now, Mary. In relation to the engagement, okay, Tox has identified that we'll engage at every level. It's the style of engagement now I want to address, okay. For example, where I live, we have a tenant residence association. It's quite a large estate, and more than half the population is drawn from primarily West Africa, in fact, primarily from West Africa, and a few from the Caribbean, but most certainly from West Africa. Okay, would you attend, for example, a tenant residence association if they were to create space on their agenda to discuss FGM? Would that be the sort of thing you might do?
Absolutely. We've actually done the same with some housing associations, Peabody Trust, for example, because we know that actually the housing association, housing trusts don't just work on rents and houses and repairs. They are also now working actually on, especially domestic abuse. You know, they're trained to, when you go into a house, you know, be aware, you know, you may notice something that is going on, you know. So if they're not aware of what FGM is, you know, how can they say, you know, notice something strange going on, or if a child maybe tells them something. So we have actually worked with housing associations. You know, some of them have been in our training as well, and they've told us as well, you know, this is what we do. We don't just focus on the housing. We also now, you know, look out for any strange things that's going on, especially around domestic abuse. And so we would come, we would ask for a space even to come and do things like coffee mornings, like workshops. How do we engage with your tenants? You know, not just women, but men as well. We could start with the women and then also move on to the men. And because some communities, they're worried about, these are women's issues, but we're like, no, these are human issues. We all need to be engaged in it. So absolutely, going through housing association would be really, really crucial, because would be maybe one of the ways that we could access people in that estate and talk to them.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you for that really good response. And Tox, if I may, just tackle it from another perspective, these issues from another perspective, one that I've increasingly become very acutely aware. But you know, we term ourselves as Africans, of course, but clearly within Africa and indeed the Caribbean, there are ethnic groups. So of course, I'm interested, and I'm trying to test it out with a number of my colleagues of mine. Some were from Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Jamaica, Tanzania, Ethiopia. Okay, and what I asked of them, if a leader of an organization is a Ghanaian, for example, let's say Ghanaian, okay, but you're Nigerian, would you see that person as a leader and you therefore warm to that person, or would your national instincts interfere with this and not see her as being a, let's say in the case of Nigerians, it might be they're not seeing you as a from the I'd like to say Fulani community, because that's, I know, would be where it may be practiced, but anyway, let's go to Yoruba or Igbo. Whereas if you're from Ghana, of course, it's a Gach or indeed some, get it right, it'll come to me in a second. So how do you overcome these ethnic differences amongst African peoples? How do you overcome this? Well, it's for me,
I think
it's easy, but I've found increasingly troublesome, particularly in politics, because we say we are African, but yet we retain strong ethnic identities, which sometimes interfere with our ability to maintain cohesion.
I think I would respond to that with an old adage from a coat of arms, I think from Glasgow coat of arms or so, about the bird that could not fly. And that the bird that could not fly because he was afraid of, failing, wasn't sure about how to use the wings. And because he was so, frozen by all of these things, he just was a bird that walked around and never achieved or attained its full potential. We all come from, sometimes if you're migrating from a cultural place, from one place that I would call the first house to a second or third house, which might be the UK, every new environment needs the development of new, fundamental skills or tweaking the skills that we have.
Okay.
And you are talking there of what is quite real. And what we address a lot in our workshops, our sessions, our training, our engagement, coffee mornings in particular, as both conscious and unconscious biases. And we say to them that it is real.
Yes.
However, we focus on what we have in common,
Yes.
rather than what those little differences. And we also emphasize that the differences make us unique. It would be boring if everybody in the world looked like me. Because there would be no, and it's about accepting that these are there and are real. And then we address those. Okay, we work with a community I won't mention. There are political issues in the original country. Come from one country, but two different communities in that country.
Yes.
And so we are engaging, we have a peer-to-peer, we do all sorts of engagement, peer-to-peer sessions with these communities. And let's say, for example, there are 15 women, 8 from one community and the rest from the other, and they have to work together. So we ask them, what is a good woman in your community? The answers are very similar. Now, to you, who is a good woman? The answers are even more similar. We begin to help them to understand what they have in common. And by the third session, they start talking to each other. They don't sit in little clusters that they had before. Of course, virtually now we do hybrid now. That's the way forward. Same thing, we mix it up. And we have these uncomfortable conversations. I think it's important to broaden our worldview. Understand what are the do's and don'ts of other people, but not necessarily have them in your head all the time. Otherwise, not function, because there are so many diverse communities out there. So what we do is to do a lot of, I would say, background work and scoping, like I said before. What are the potential challenges here? How do we exactly address it? Even we will have a session, maybe Mary and I and some of our team, we have a session. We finish the session, we debrief. Okay, what could we have done better? We learn every day. We don't call ourselves experts. We are learners. We learn together. And when we have engagement, we are not telling people, we are learning with them. It's a two thing, because we hope they take something away, and we do as well. So the one thing that is a fact is you will have those clash points in communities. And what you need to impress on, your audience is, we are here today.
Let's take this call, if I may. Let's take this call.
Okay.
I know it's loud, sorry. Good morning. Good morning, Courtney.
Good morning.
Oh, I think, yes, we can hear you. You need to turn off your device because we can hear it in the background.
Hold on, let me turn down my.
Thank you.
Let me put it down. Good morning, the motivator. Bear with me. Okay, turn it down for me now. Yes, what I'd like to find out from the ladies. Well, first of all,
forgive me, McCorder. Can you say your name, please, just for the record?
Apologies, my name is Michelle.
Hello, good morning, Michelle.
Ladies, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show to educate us in this very serious issue, something that is normally hidden and we don't know much about. And there's no clarity and understanding with regards to it. So thank you so much for breaking it down for us so that there is understanding, yes? And less of the shame and so forth has been taken away.
Yes.
What I'd like to find out, just a few things if I may, is by doing FGM, what are the cultures or the people honoring exactly? Because it's been passed down from generation, but what is it that they're honoring to do these to the females?
Pause there. I think that's an interesting question. Now, what is, like, I've tried to get an answer that question. I'd be interested to hear what Toxo Mary says in response to you. Who was to go first? Who was to go first?
Go for it, Mary.
So there are a number of reasons why communities do FGM, practice FGM, depends from community to community. There are communities who practice, they perform FGM.
1 minute, Mary. Corder, can you hear us okay?
No, it sort of went off, but I can hear you just now.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mary.
So as I was saying, there are different reasons really, but the most common one is FGM is seen as a transition from childhood to a woman.
Sorry, Mary, one second.
Okay.
Corder, you can't hear it? You can't hear
Yes,
Mary?
I cannot hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear it? Oh, 1
I
moment.
don't know why.
Hold on. We can hear you very well here. One second.
Yeah.
If I can resolve this very quickly.
Is it me?
No, not you. We can hear you. We can hear you very well. 1 second.
Is Mary speaking?
Yes. Okay, Mary, go ahead now. That makes a difference.
Yeah. So as I was saying, the reasons depend from, varies from community to community. But the most common one is that FGM is seen as a transition from being a child to becoming a woman, So we believe strongly FGM is also a precursor to child marriage, because in a lot of communities, once a girl is cut, no matter what the age is, they can actually be married off. So that's why, you see a lot of child marriage being linked to FGM. So people talk about honor, a girl who is cut or a woman who is cut is deemed to be a good woman, respectful, she will not be, running after men, or, it's to control their sexual urges and things like that. There is people wrongly associate FGM with religion, but we know that no religion advocates FGM, people to practice FGM. And we really, really insist on that, and we have leaflets on that. We give communities, because when you put religion on something, it stops people questioning it. They just go along with it. And sometimes people use religion to justify harmful practices. People talk about, women. When we talk about women, why people always ask us, if you're a mother who has gone through FGM, you've suffered with it, why would you want to put your daughter through it? But I think talks touched on social norms before. Society, or these cultural beliefs or social norm, puts a lot of pressure on women. FGM is carried out by women, mothers, grandmothers, a lot of all cutters are women, really, across communities. But if, when we think about back home community, we live in communities, we marry from within our communities. Now, if my daughter has not been cut, she will forever be considered a child in some of these communities. Nobody will marry her. She will become an outcast. She cannot cook for her family. There's so much stigma on not performing FGM, So for them, those stigmas far outweighs all this harmfulness we talk about. So that's why we really focus on, let's change that mindset. Let's change that belief. Let's normalize conversation around these, these practices. And of course, there's some myths that people believe that, when a girl is not cut, she's dirty or she smells, and we know these are not true. And when we bring women together, in our workshops, in our coffee morning, before we brought a doctor to speak to women about the anatomy of a woman's body, what does our reproductive, organs look like? And for some of these women, a lot of them had never seen anything like this. We work with a community where, their practice is that every time a woman is cut open, those women who have had type 3 FGM to have their baby, afterwards they get sewn up again every single time. So our duty, because they're frightened that their husbands will leave them because their bodies now look different. So we had to talk them through this. There's some women who are then obsessed with cleaning themselves with Dettol and internal cleaning, which causes a raft of health problems. So we bring professionals to really break these things down. So those beliefs are really, really powerful, and they hold on to it, you know. And when you sit with these women and really kind of open that space and say, this is our space, it's a safe space, let's talk. Then they said, but if we don't do this, we will not be able to have children. We'll never be married, you know. And that belief is, they're held strongly, even here, even away from the background. And talks can add on to that if I've missed anything. But yeah,
I think you covered it all.
Beautiful, thank you. And that, what you're doing here, of course, is to raise understanding, you see.
Yeah.
And how it is, and what you describe is
and Martin, sorry if I can just add something, it's that sense of belonging, wanting to belong. We now have a different problem emerging with girls who are protected by their parents from FGM, but they were never told about it. They are now growing up, reaching 18, 19, 20, and because of the stigma from their peers, they're actually, some have, you know, taken themselves and seeking FGM or confronting their family that, why did you cut me off my culture? So when we talk to parents and say, and they say, my daughter is never gonna go through this, we then say, okay, so now talk to your children, talk to them about it, because you cannot protect somebody from something they don't know. They have to know, the families have to talk about this, both fathers and mothers.
Thank you, thank you. Corda, I'm not sure if you were able to hear that response.
Yeah, I can hear it on the phone itself, so
okay.
I had to tap into the computer to hear it.
Okay.
The other thing, roughly, what age roughly is this procedure carried out?
Good question. Good question.
Right.
Yes.
So, okay. So again, it depends on each communities. We have people who, girls are cut as they're born, you know, newborn babies. Some people like between 0 and 5. 7 is a very important age in some communities. They're like, the girl must not go beyond the age of 7. And then you come to some, you know, like other communities where it's done just around puberty or just before puberty. So teenagers. And I know from the country I come from, in one community, it's actually done as part of the marriage ceremony. It's the last thing that's done before you're handed over to your husband. Some people are cut in their 20s, you know, 1920s or even older. So it really varies from 0 to whatever age traditionally. But also there are some women who, you know, whether when they get married, you know, they may come from a non-practicing background, but they're married to somebody, a man from a practicing community. And so she's a lot older, and the pressure, because also she wants to keep her marriage, or she wants to get married. This is why I mentioned also a few white people, women we've come across who got cut because they were married in these communities or wanted to get married in these communities. And unfortunately, after going through that, the marriage also ended because the impact on them was just too much. So it depends. It varies from community to community. And also now with the laws, you know, I mean, even in Africa, the law on FGM is there. And because of fear of that, people are changing the way they used to practice. FGM in culture, traditional, used to be.
I find it quite amazing.
Sorry,
yeah.
That.
Sorry, Corda.
Mary.
Corda, yeah. So she was just responding to you at that point. Can you just let Mary finish, then you can come back to her? Sorry, Mary.
I think I was just really saying, with the law, it's also changed. People used to do it a certain ways in a certain period in the year, like dry season, after all the field work is finished, with a lot of celebrations. But now it's really going underground. And also people who used to cut girls when they're a little bit older, they're now being cut as newborn, for example, because they want to avoid being, like falling foul of the law, or being known that they've done this, and unfortunately, we are also seeing the medicalization of it in terms of actually medical professionals in some parts of the world actually practicing this. So people like midwives and nurses and even some doctors, we've seen a few in the media, global media, in some places as well.
Thank you, Mary. It's very uncomfortable listening, I've got to say, and I want to understand the cultural impetus behind it. And I have found that in the schools I've connected to, I find it very difficult to understand why mutilating a woman's genitals is in some way signaling adulthood or readiness for marriage. I don't understand it, and maybe next time I do FGM, it should be men on this program.
Absolutely, it's the ballpark of it is that these are all reasons given, but we know it's all about control. It's controlling women's sexuality, sexual life. It's like a girl or a woman should not be too sexual. It must be controlled. It must be so.
Okay. Now so to a caller, I'm gonna end the call now because I'm about to end the program. All right, but I hope the responses to questions have been useful to you.
It has, but I would like to find out, in all honesty, considering you're saying that a lot of this is done when the girl is a baby, why are these things not being picked up readily by the doctors as they're going for regular checks?
Well, you're asking the $1 million question. If it's happening in the UK, oh my gosh.
Not everyone has access to doctors.
Yeah.
And even in the UK, there are situations where children are off the radar and they are born. They have not accessed any clinical services. I know it sounds almost unbelievable, but we know that some of these situations are out there. And even when a child has, gone through their normal checks when they were born, at some point they don't, and they get missed. That's how we hear some of these very, very horrific, child abuse cases. And those are the ones we hear of. There are quite a lot of those. But what needs to be done is the effective safeguarding. That's why people like, the housing associations, neighborhood watches, schools, faith leads, everyone needs to be part of this conversation.
Thank you. Caller, I'm going to thank you for your call and keep listening, okay? Keep listening, and thank you for those really useful questions. At least you were able to call and ask those questions. I know, again, I'm finding the messages on my phone keep coming up, but I'm trying to encourage those women and two men, but mostly women, to call in, but they are shy to call in. And I understand why. But I said, I think the next time there has to be men here, and maybe a few men from Forwarduk should be present. I believe this is, maybe we can overcome this shyness to talk about this in public. But Caller, thank you for the call. Very much. Thank you very much for the call.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the show and what you're discussing to educate us for us to move forward to be of help. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Mary talks. This has been outstanding. Again, outstanding. I can tell you're moving people. But culture, when a habit, a practice becomes culturally institutionalized, okay, it is really difficult to shift it. And that's why I asked the question to you earlier, well, progress you've made. In my experience, and as a politician, you need to identify, I think you said it, Tox, the key movers, the key influencers, It's usually the traditional leaders I've found, or religious leaders, okay? They're the ones, I need to get on this show, the traditional leaders and religious leaders on this show, and have a real discussion about FGM and why we're permitted to continue as part of our custom and practice. I think that's what we want to do. but you've had a profound impact already, a profound impact. And I'm going to assure you, and I don't mind making this public, I'm going to lobby that you have a presence here in Southwark. In Southwark, we have one of the largest, if not the largest, West African populations in the country here in Southwark. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm aware of some of the figures now, and we absolutely need an organisation that is led by financed by Africans, led by Africans, and is for Africans. That's what we need. Okay. We don't need to be patronised by other people. We can do this ourselves, given the right tools and the resources. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lobby. I will lobby, and I will encourage those other politicians who are listening to this. Let's lobby, get Forward UK in our boroughs, okay? And most certainly, Forward UK should be here in Southwark. If you're in Greenwich, you definitely should be here in Southwark, of all places.
I just live, yeah, absolutely. And you know, people tend to go to where they relate. You know, there may be other organizations working in Southwark, but if they work with other communities, we know one of our consortium partner works in Southwark, but they work mainly with Middle Eastern women. So you won't find a lot of African women going to access that service. The few that go to them, they probably signpost to us, but that's really few. And also the same with us. If you know, a Middle Eastern woman comes, we will start the service supporting them, but then sometimes we have to refer them to that organization because of the language or the nuances behind the culture. And then so we work very much in partnership, and it's the trust. We build that trust with the communities, and you know, and kind of relation, you know, they come.
Tox, I'm going to give you the last words. What would you like to say in closing to the audience? Because they can see the website address now. It's www.forwarduk.org.uk. That's your website address. What would be your closing words to the audience listening to you today?
I would say really it is about a conversation. And we shouldn't be afraid of uncomfortable conversations, because we need them to move to the next level. And they can contact us, like you said, on 0208-960-4000. We are here. And, you know, if you are from an African background and you want someone you can talk to who you feel would understand you, we are there. We are here. Call us. We are only a phone call away. And I want to say thank you very much, Martin, for inviting us today. And I look forward to that conversation with the faith groups and the men. It's crucial.
Absolutely. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Inspirational. Long may
you, Martin,
prosper. Thank you for being outstanding.
Thank you, Martin.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
An audience, as I've said before, it's been so important, audience, to focus on the women and the work of women. Again, examples of two outstanding women dedicated to the upliftment of our peoples, dedicated to eradicate where we can FGM, female genital mutilation, to support women who are experiencing both domestic or sexual violence. I commend to you forwarduk.org.uk. Please contact them. If in doubt, please seek their advice. And my political colleagues and others, both in Southwark and beyond, let's engage Forward UK. They've proven their pedigree. Let's give them support that they absolutely amply deserve. Let's repair ourselves. You know, reparations begins with self. Self-repair is an integral part of that broader reparations campaign. And I commend forwarduk.org.uk to you. Started with love in their hearts, with the intention that you'd be a transformative organization. I commend them to you. I commend them to you. Again, this has been an outstanding program. A great pleasure to hear from our guest. it's been a great pleasure to be able to articulate the needs of women in regards to both FGM, domestic, and indeed other sexual violence that might be committed against our women. It needs to stop now. Nevertheless, this program is intended to empower. This program is intended to move you, to translate all these great words into action. And remember, success is ours for the taking. Good day to you all. See you on the next strong, as Chief Akambabai would say to us all. See you next strong. Pleasure. Bye-bye.